Hello, Bible readers. It is Wednesday, March 3rd. We're in 2 Kings chapters 5 through 7 and 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 12 through 49. This section of 2 Kings is one of the most amazing stories, I think, in all of Scripture, especially as we've read so much about a God who has so many boundaries for the people who are Israel. And then to see how God reaches out with grace and healing to Naaman while bringing curse instead of blessing on Elisha's servant. Naaman, when we think about who Naaman is, a chief military officer of the Aramean army, this would be a great man of his time, favored, we're told, by the Syrian king, that is the enemy king. Naaman is a veteran of battles where he has defeated Israel. He has an Israelite girl that he took from one of those battles. To think that this person could come to Elisha for healing and receive such generous treatment it's not what we'd expect, right? It's a turn. That victory by the Aramean army is said to have been granted by the Lord, my commentary suggests. Not suggests, that's what we're told. But I'm reading from my commentary. This would be a standard way in Israelite writings of explaining the defeat of Israel as God's people. For in Israelite theology, no foreign army can be victorious over Israel unless it is by the will of the Lord. For defeat, and in this case in particular, this defeat would result in the conversion of a powerful Gentile and the glorification of the Lord. This is no doubt the sort of story that the Israelites, particularly those in exile, liked to tell. Despite the tragedy of defeat and captivity, it seems greater good may be achieved. So, it would be a pretty amazing story to be able to tell, yeah, we lost, but you know what God did with that after. We read this story, this Naaman story, in worship sometimes. It comes up in our narrative lectionary as well, but not the second half of this story. The Naaman being healed part, the Naaman converting part. All of that might be more familiar, but Elisha's servant Gehazi being on the take, lying to his master, taking 2 talents of silver from Naaman, taking blessings for personal gain. Not a good idea, right? And so we see the obvious results as the Gentile is blessed and the prophet's servant becomes cursed. Again, this story reminds us God sees and knows all. In chapter 6, we've got more miracles of Elisha, and then we've got a siege in Samaria, which ends in a pretty surprising way. But to the Samaritans' benefit. This whole idea of lepers finding camps deserted and then telling their king that king may not have deserved such a victory. But again, we see God's power in all this. God chose victory for them. Our 1 Corinthians text, we've got a discussion of resurrection. I think maybe the thing I took away from this is that faith for Paul is not just what one believes. It's not a list of here's what I believe and here's what I believe, like we do with the creed. Faith is more than just beliefs. For Paul, faith is a relationship, a changing ebb and flow, a dynamic relationship between people and God. And so I've always thought, especially in terms of Paul, faith is not a thing to have. It's more like a verb to do. It's a relationship. He ends our readings today, Paul does, with a discussion of continuity and change, which of course for a community of faith in the midst of a pandemic and when are we going to reopen and all that, I know all about the challenges of continuity and change. So do you. I am one with my God. My God is with us, all of us at all times and in all places.